It's opening day. It's opening day. No, I'm not going to do it. We're not talking baseball. This is Canucks conversation. So we're going to talk about the Vancouver Canucks because more importantly than opening day, Vancouver Canucks play a game tonight, and it's going to be a good one. We're going to get you all set for it. My name is Dave Goudrelli. That is Harman Dial. Our technical producer is Grady Sass, and this is Canucks Conversation. And as always, it is brought to you by the 2023 Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X is Toyota's brand new all-electric SUV that is designed to go the distance for you and your family. The BZ4X is packed with Toyota's coolest tech, but it still has that trust you SUV feel you know and love. And even though it's electric, it's capable of effortlessly conquering any terrain, whether it's rain, snow, mud, or your friends' questionable post-game recaps. The BZ4X will get you through it all. This is going to be a great show today, folks. We got a lot to talk about when it comes to this game against the Dallas Stars. And Harm, I don't know if it's just me, I think this might be the game that I've been most excited about in a while. You've got the Pacific Division leaders in the Vancouver Canucks. You've got the Central Division leaders in the Dallas Stars. One of these teams is leaving Rogers Arena with 100 points tonight, and I think that's a really cool stipulation for tonight's game.
Yeah, and the last two games against the Stars have both been really tight, have both been really entertaining. If you go back and remember the first time the Canucks played the Stars, they won that game. It was one of the best third periods that they had defending a lead. And it was that moment where it sunk in that, okay, this team has a different level of maturity in those situations compared to, of course, the years past where they'd go up a goal and it wouldn't even matter if it was an elite side against Dallas or a bottom feeder. They just choke that lead. And I remember that being a really important game considering the quality of the opponent in my mind, as far as going, okay, this Canucks team feels legit, more than just, okay, they're going to get into the playoffs. The second time I was actually in Dallas on that road trip in late December. And that game was fun back and forth too. I know the ending wasn't great because the Stars won in OT. And I remember the Canucks themselves, in the locker room, even though that had been a successful road trip as a whole, that was also a learning moment in the sense that you could tell how much higher the bar was, that it was a successful road trip overall. And they still walked away with a point from that game. Yet the players' heads were hanging. There was just a sense of like, we can't believe we let that one away. Whereas, again, if you're a team that just had aspirations of making the playoffs, you could have easily looked at that successful road trip as a whole to that point, and at least getting 1 point against an elite Stars side and gone, okay, well, that's a satisfactory result. And again, I think it speaks to the Canucks having reached a higher bar now.
We're going to talk more about the game. Let's get to what happened at Morning Skate today. We had scenes from Morning Skate uploaded on CanucksArmy.com earlier this morning. And Harma, I know you read everything that goes on Canucks Army, so you know that Dakota Joshua and Arshdeep Bains are going to be in the lineup. It was an optional skate today, but Dakota Joshua took part in the optional skate. And yesterday at practice, as we talked about on yesterday's show, Dakota Joshua expected to skate with JT Miller and Brock Besser on the top line. Harm, we touched on that yesterday. Tyson Cole wrote a really good article over on Canucks Army about how that fit might be. And again, you and I talked yesterday about the cycle play of that line and how we both think Joshua is going to be a good fit. I think when I talked earlier about the excitement that I have for tonight's game and just, this feels like a game that as someone who's going to be watching it very closely, you're excited for it. Like, I think if you're a fan of good hockey, you're excited for tonight's game.
For sure, especially because, I was actually at Morning Skate and talking at it, obviously an opportunity to speak about Joshua's return, confirmed it. One thing I found interesting is he mentioned that in conversations with Dakota, one area that he's maybe a little not worried, maybe a little concerned as far as, okay, I've missed a lot of time, how's my game immediately going to look, is sort of the acceleration of his skating, because you can't simulate that without games, no matter how much you practice, no matter how hard you train on your own. And that sort of relates to stop and start situations. For instance, let's say the Canucks have possession of the puck, especially on that Miller line, and he's trying to make plays. If there's a turnover, you got to switch from offense mode to quickly getting on your horse on the back check. Those are the situations where there might be a little bit of rust, or even on the contrary, where there's a change in possession where the Canucks are in the defensive zone and a defenseman breaks up the cycle, and now all of a sudden the wingers are trying to fly up the ice and counterattack. That's where I'm going to be interested to see how does Joshua's pace and quickness look, because that's going to, I think, dictate a big part of how impactful he's going to be on the forecheck, how impactful he's going to be winning those 50-50 pucks along the walls, because that's a huge part. And that half a second in how quickly you arrive there can make a huge difference. Now, on the positive side, especially considering how deep the Stars are, it really helps to add another top 9 winger. And specifically, we know the Canucks haven't scored a lot since the All-Star break. Tocchet was asked about that at Morning Skate, and he said that they've been having difficulty compared to the first half of the season getting on the inside, and he needs guys to fight through checks, win their battles when they're boxing defenders sort of off the puck. And that's where Joshua is going to be able to make a big difference, is within that inner slot around the blue paint. Because of his big body, he's got both the physical tools and the smarts of how to get open that I think should help the Canucks hopefully create some more offense from the inside too.
Another thing from Morning Skate today, Rick Tocchet, whoa, voice crack, but Rick Tocchet spoke about the need to get Archer Seelovs in for a game. This is what he said: "I've talked to Clarkey, and it could be the next game." That, of course, coming against Anaheim. We haven't specifically said, but he will definitely be in the net here in the next few days. Okay, so Sunday is the Canucks' next game after this. Looks like that's going to be an Archer Seelov start, and this is a great time for me to kind of lay out our long weekend schedule, how our shows are going to be positioned. We're going to be in studio tomorrow, back at the Wall Center. We've done a lot of remote shows, it feels like, lately, but we're going to be back at the Wall Center tomorrow, doing an in-person show, and we've got a really fun little segment idea that we're going to try to execute on tomorrow, so that should be a lot of fun. And then Monday, no show on Monday, but we will be back on Tuesday, and we'll be talking about an Archer Seelov start, and it's going to be busy. It's going to be busy because then the Canucks play on Tuesday, Wednesday next week, and it is going to be a busy week, busy month as we march towards the playoffs. But let's talk more, Harm, about tonight's game. This segment is brought to you. Actually, no, you know what? It's a Light the Lamp Day. I was going to tell you about one of the great beers over at Four Winds Brewing, and I'm going to, but usually I kind of go about a different one, but I'm going to tell you about one right now, and it's the one you've heard about the most from us, the Four Winds Light Lager. Vancouver is playing. Wow, I have to restart that. That's so funny. Wow. Okay. Can you hear me, Harm? I just had
I can.
Total cut up. All right, cool. All right. Vancouver's playing Dallas tonight, and we want to know who's going to score the first goal for Vancouver. If you nail it, you could win a $25 gift card to the Four Winds Tap Room, located at 72nd and River Road in Delta. Enter by following us on social media. Keep an eye out for today's show clip and comment who you think will light the lamp and score the first goal tonight. Winners will be contacted directly. Check us out at Canucks Army on Twitter, at CanucksArmy.com on Instagram, and Canucks Army on Facebook. And make sure you ask about Four Winds Light Lager at your local liquor store, or have some delivered to your front door through the online shop at fourwindsbrewing.ca. I am going with Dakota Joshua.
I'm going to go with Pettersson. He was quiet in that LA game, but he's been rolling overall in this last little mini stretch, especially with that line alongside Garland and Höglander. So I think he's going to get back on track tonight.
And I apologize for that little interruption. It was weird. I had a big click in my headphones and it totally threw me off. Like it was the weirdest thing. But anyways, let's get moving here. We got squirrel chat in the anyone else segment. We're gonna have to talk about squirrels and baseball. People are asking about baseball, so that's the rule on anyone else, Harm, is when people ask about it, I have to talk about it. So people are asking about baseball, I'm gonna have to talk baseball and anyone else. But first, let's talk more about tonight's game. I said it earlier, Harm. This is two top teams facing off against each other. One of these teams is leaving Rogers Arena with 100 points tonight. The Dallas Stars are at 99 points, and the Vancouver Canucks are at 98 points. One of these teams is leaving Rogers Arena with 100 points tonight, and I don't know how it can get any more exciting than that. I don't know. I'm a big round numbers guy. Like, I'm a huge round numbers guy. I'm a big fan of round numbers. So yeah, I'm excited for it. The Rangers are the first team to 100 points. They're already there, but first team in the West, whoever wins tonight, or not wins necessarily, because Dallas could lose in OT. But anyways, someone's leaving as the top team in the West with the first team in the West to 100 points as well. That's super cool to me. I like that.
Yeah, and for me, I'm also just really curious to get a closer read on. I know Dallas is a cup contender, but how do I rate them against a team like Colorado, for example, when we're discussing the best team in the Western Conference? A few things to keep an eye on. First, Jake Ottinger on the season, we know that he's had a down year. We know that he's got an 898 save percentage, and he's one of the X factors that you look at for the playoffs, that if Ottinger can get rolling, then that Stars team, I think, would become the Western Conference favorite. He's picked up 3 straight wins and has a 920. Now, small stretch, 3 games. That's either maybe just a little high before he crashes and continues on his inconsistent path this season, or this could be an opportunity for him to really build momentum and get hot at the right time, which would be really scary, particularly for the Central Division teams, because from Vancouver's perspective, you're not going to face Dallas in the playoffs unless you get to the Western Conference final. So that's something that I'm keeping an eye on. The other aspect is their new look blue line. They, of course, brought Tanev in, and even before they acquired Chris Tanev, Thomas Harley has been a really exciting breakout defenseman for them. He spent most of last season in the AHL, but was recalled just prior to the playoffs. I really liked his game in the postseason, and this year he's played at a bona fide top pair level, but for most of the season has been anchoring the second pair. Now he's up playing alongside Miro Heiskanen, and Miro Heiskanen for a long time was sort of in the same category as Quinn Hughes, where he didn't really have a legit top pair caliber partner. He was dragging around Ryan Suter in the playoffs, for example, and it was just disastrous. Harley and Heiskanen's results since they've been together are ludicrous. So I'm excited to see, are they an elite defense pair, and how does then Chris Tanev look on more of a shutdown pair with SL Lindell? Because, man, Dallas's top 4 on paper looks much better than it did going into the playoffs last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dallas, just quickly on Dallas, because you brought up Jake Ottinger. So they've won 5 straight games, but I think context matters a bit here, because those games, like their last 4, Coyotes, Penguins, Coyotes, Sharks. So
okay, fair. Yeah.
I'm not buying the 5-game win streak from Dallas, even if they did get one in the form of a 4-1 victory over the LA Kings. But Scott Wedgwood was in net for that. In the game before that, we saw Jake Ottinger get pulled against the New Jersey Devils in a 6-2 loss. So again, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not buying this idea that, yeah, Jake Ottinger's turned a corner. No, Jake Ottinger's faced the Coyotes twice.
Well, no, I didn't say he's turned a corner, but sometimes even if it is against lesser opponents, that's sometimes the confidence that you need to then do it against a top side.
Oh, undoubtedly. And again, like NHL goaltenders will tell you that just feeling the puck, right? Like it's the same kind of principle when you play in a game and your team's dominating for the first 15 minutes, and then you face your first shot at like the 4-minute mark of the first period and it gets by you. Yeah, you got to feel some rubber. Like you need to feel the puck. And again, the same goes for when you're struggling. You need to feel yourself making saves, even if it's not, the best players in the game taking those shots at you. You got to make some saves, and that's how you get your confidence back. So yeah, your point is absolutely valid. I just wanted to point out that their wins did come. Fair. 2 of them against the Coyotes, which is anyways, the Coyotes aren't that bad this year, but anyways, let's keep talking about this game. Casey DeSmith starts in goal for the Canucks. No surprise there. Harm, I talked about DeSmith in the last game that we talked about. I thought it was maybe his worst since he's taken over for Thatcher Demko as the Canucks starter. Don't think it was his fault, but you want an extra save there. And look, at a 3-2 loss, DeSmith playing the way he has prior to that game probably means the Canucks at least get to overtime, or at least go away with the victory, right? Like you have to think that DeSmith's looking for a bit of a personal bounce back, because I really didn't think his game was that great against LA.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't at his best against LA, but I also don't think he played that poorly. Like, I think on one of the goals, he probably should have covered it up, and it allowed the play to continue. But besides that, I mean, I think the first goal, for example, was like one of those backdoor cross seam passing plays. And that rebound one was really the only one that I looked at and went, okay, I think DeSmith would maybe want that one back. So I'm not really looking, like, I don't think he needs to approach this game from a mindset of, oh, I'm looking for a bounce back here, because it wasn't that poor of a game from him. So I don't think
I
there's a need to
think
just put that pressure on himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not trying to say he was bad or that he needs to put pressure. I just think that the goals he let in were, and again, the ones we're talking about here, like sliding through your crease like he was, and really overcommitting to some plays. That's not what he's done this year, and that's what he's worked to get. Like he's worked hard to get that out of his game, and he's done a really good job. Like Smith's come a long way this season. Like he's played extremely well. He said like a week ago he thinks it's the best he's played in his career. And like I said it yesterday, the relationship with him and Ian Clark is really good. But I would think that when they go over those goals, the Smith's going to be saying, okay, I kind of got away from my staples, right? The team has their staples, goalies have their staples, and I think the Smith got away from his a little bit in that loss. So again, not like okay, I got to steal this game, just like okay, reset, get back to what's made me successful to this point and get back to that. That's just kind of how I look at it. But again, it's not like the Smith's gotta come out for the boys because he was so bad against LA. It's not one of those. But yeah, I am looking for DeSmith to have a really strong night tonight. So we'll see how that goes.
Against Dallas too, it's going to be really challenging, because not only are they one of the highest scoring teams in the NHL, but they do it in a way where, from a goaltender's perspective, it's really hard to track pucks, because Dallas is one of the best teams in the NHL at tips, deflections, rebounds. It's You're gonna have a lot of opportunities where pucks are just kind of taking weird bounces or deflections, and from that perspective, I think it's going to be crucial tonight for DeSmith to be on top of his rebound control, because early in the season, for example, even when he was playing well at times, it felt like that's an area where sometimes he'd leave rebounds in the slot after making the initial save. Since taking over for Demko, I think overall, part of the reason he's been successful is I think he's done a much better job of eliminating those bad rebounds. That's going to be essential against the Stars.
That's a great point. That's a really good point, especially when you talk about the things that he was doing poorly at the start of the year and that he's improved on the most. Like, again, I'm talking about footwork. I'm talking about, when I say staples, I'm talking about those kind of things. Like, where are you directing those pucks when they hit you? And I think he's done a really good job at cleaning that up. And again, like early in the year, that's what we were talking about, was DeSmith was making a ton of saves and his raw numbers looked good. But, when we would have these conversations, we were talking about, his process isn't perfect though. Like his process kind of suggested that there would be some different looking numbers eventually for him, but he's really cleaned it up. Like he's really cleaned it up. If you go back and watch him from a technical standpoint, at the start of the year to now. Okay, Harm, did you have anything else you wanted to say about this game? Because it's only 2:20 and I feel like we're almost done previewing this game. So do you have anything else that you wanted to say about tonight's game?
Yeah, I think so. A couple things. First, I'm not sure how many people saw it, but Talkit confirmed that Arshdeep Bains is also drawing into the lineup, so Aman's going to be coming out. So that'll be interesting. We didn't see line rushers at skate today because it wasn't optional, and he wasn't part of line rushers at Wednesday's practice at UBC. So we don't know exactly where he's going to slot, but I would anticipate it being likely with Suter and Podkolzin on that fourth line. And from Bains, I'm going to be curious to see, can he drive play? Can he create some offensive chances? Because I don't worry about him from a defensive standpoint, especially if he cleans up some of his penalties. But for him to take the next step in looking more comfortable as an NHL player and carving out a consistent role, it's going to be like, when you think back to his NHL debut against Colorado, he created 2 or 3 chances with his playmaking. He'd set up Bluger. He was involved offensively, and I think the longer we saw his first cup of coffee, it was more difficult for him to drive play, to create offense, and especially in that final game against LA before he was sent down, I think he was struggling to handle the puck cleanly. He was really fighting it. He was playing. He spent some shifts during that game alongside JT Miller. And it felt like he was having trouble handling passes and a lot of plays with down his stick. And look, part of the trouble is that Rogers Arena has poor ice, right? So from Bains' perspective, you're not only adjusting to NHL speed and getting used to that, but now all of a sudden the ice surface isn't very good. That makes the transition a little bit more challenging. Hopefully now he can start to drive play a little bit more, create some offense, because like Podkolzin's carved out a niche and has looked so effective because he's learned how to use his physical tools to be a menace on the forecheck and sort of carve out an almost like an energy line type fourth line role. For Bains, he needs to create offense, I think, to find a role, because he isn't going to be, let's say, a defensive specialist and stick that way.
And I mean, that's not even what he did in Abbotsford, right? Like, he's been their most trusted guy, and he's playing top line minutes in Abbotsford, and he's trusted to play defensively, but he's also driving play. Like, that's what's going to make him successful. And I think you're absolutely bang on there, Harm. Looking to see what he's able to do tonight. It'll be very interesting. The other thing we mentioned yesterday, and if you didn't catch it yesterday, folks, it looks like the Canucks are going back to the D pairs that we saw prior to the game against LA, with Filip Hronek back with Quinn Hughes. So we will see what happens tonight, and of course we will talk about it tomorrow as well. I wanted to quickly get this in before we move on, Harm. The clinching scenarios for the Canucks tonight, because they had some last game, didn't get it done, but tonight the Canucks can clinch a playoff berth if they defeat the Stars in any fashion, or if they get 1 point versus the Stars and the Blues lose to the Flames in any fashion, or no matter what happens in the Stars-Canucks game, if the Wild lose to the Sharks in any fashion and the Blues lose to the Flames in regulation, the Canucks will clinch. Harm, I'm looking at that first one and saying, go clinch it on home ice. Go do it in front of your home fence. Don't do it against the Anaheim Ducks at 3:30 on a Sunday. Is it Sunday they play? What they played a weird time. Yeah, it was Sunday 3:30 or 12:30 start. The game will end at like 2:30, 3 o'clock. Don't do that. Get it done tonight. Get it done in this big game that we're amping up so much, and we're so excited to talk about it and to watch it. It's going to be a great game tonight, folks, and you're not going to want to miss it. So we will be back tomorrow to talk about what happens in this game, and hopefully, knock on wood, the playoff-bound Canucks. We know they're winning the playoffs, but it'd be cool to clinch a spot. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, why make people wait? And like you said, especially to do it against a quality opponent like the Stars, it's going to feel extra meaningful as opposed to just beating up on a lowly Ducks team.
All right, we got baseball questions, so you know what time it is, Harm.
Oh boy, log out of your burners, man. It's just
no, it's
you
not,
on like 5 different accounts asking baseball questions.
I considered it. I considered having to do it, but people brought it. People brought it. So yep. Got to talk about it. No, I'm just kidding. We have a lot of hockey questions that I'm actually really excited to get to. So, folks, get your questions in, because it's time for Anyone Else, presented by DoorDash. It's our listeners' chance to get involved and hit us up in the YouTube live chat. And it's also our listeners' chance to get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. That's all capital letters NATION and the numbers 25. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms do apply. Okay, Harm. This is one that we'll get to right away, because I think he joined a little bit late, but Bain in the YouTube live chat asked, will Archer Seelovs get any games in? Rick Tockett, I'll reiterate this, Rick Tockett said earlier today at Morning Skate that Seelovs will get into a game, hinted at Sunday being the first game for Seelovs getting in. And then, of course, the Canucks play on Tuesday and Wednesday in back-to-back games against the Vegas Golden Knights and the Arizona Coyotes, both of those games coming on the road. So Seelovs will get one of those for sure. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be the first game that Seelovs gets. We're going to get 2 games of Seelovs that we'll be able to talk about. And you know I'll have a lot of fun talking about that. Logan Van Dyke is saying, see you later. He's already gone. We're still talking hockey, Logan. We're still talking hockey. I know the audience. I know the audience. There was another one here, Harm, that I wanted to get to. Nick P about my light lamp pick. Joshua scoring in his first game back is the ultimate quads vibes pick. And yeah, it absolutely is. Karen Versation said, no first round matchup is looking good for anyone. The West is a nightmare this year. Harmon, as much as we've talked about how you don't really have a favorable opponent if you're the Vancouver Canucks, whose matchup do you like the most? Like, Because again, if the playoffs started right now, just to update everybody on the playoff picture, in the West, it would be Dallas versus Vegas, Colorado versus Winnipeg, Vancouver versus Nashville, Edmonton versus LA. Harmon, dare I say that the Canucks have the best matchup if they match up against the Nashville Predators? Meanwhile, we've been talking about how, yeah, you don't want anyone like Nashville's getting hot right now. What happens? What happens if they face Nashville? You've got Vegas, you've got LA. Out of those matchups that I just gave you, the Canucks have the most favorable matchup of all teams.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm gonna try not rehashing the same conversation that we seem to inevitably somehow stumble into every day. But I almost think for a while I was flip-flopping there on a team like LA, but even just from an entertainment aspect, like I think it would be brutal if they meet in the playoffs. And yeah, I think the Canucks could beat LA, but they would be the favorites in that series, even though LA has this season series advantage. But just for that to be the first taste of playoff hockey in front of fans, that type of entertainment, it's just the style of play that Vancouver has is a dreadful stylistic match against LA for an entertainment aspect. So yeah, I mean, from both an entertainment aspect and quality of opponent, for now, it seems like Nashville would be a pretty solid scenario, though, of course, we know they're not going to be an easy out at this point. But there's no easy out for any team in the West.
Okay, this is an interesting one from Karen Versation. Comparing Dallas to Colorado, and I think this is a pretty sound assessment. Dallas is a deeper team than Colorado with a lower top end. Their top 9 is arguably Dallas's, that is the toughest to match up against in the league. The Stankoven, Johnson, Ben third line is brutal to have to match up with. And I want to pivot this question because I think this person's bang on. Like, do you disagree with the assessment? Because I don't.
I agree.
Okay, so the question then, which team matches up better for the Canucks in the playoffs? Like, who would the Canucks rather face in the playoffs? In the Western Conference Final, Harm, Dallas or Colorado? I'm just going to come out and say Dallas.
I think it depends on how well Jake Onger is playing, right? At the time, like if we had to start today, maybe I lean towards Dallas just because it seems like Colorado has Vancouver's number for whatever reason. The Canucks haven't been able to beat them yet this season, whereas against Dallas, it seems like they've matched up better. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Dallas. Although, man, I keep flip-flopping between them and Colorado in terms of who, like, independent of Vancouver's stylistic matchup against them, who truly is the best team in the West. And maybe it changes because of the Middlestat acquisition and what that does for Colorado's secondary scoring. But again, like, if Onger gets going, then in net, that's such an advantage compared to Georgiev. And I think that would catapult them ahead of Colorado when we're talking about best team in the West. Although, again, I think if the playoffs started today and we're talking about a Western Conference final, who would you rather play? I think I would lean towards Dallas rather than Colorado, strictly from Vancouver's perspective.
Top G asked this. Any chance we see either DPD or Lekaramaki play? Or someone correct me on this. It's Lekaramaki. Lekaramaki. It's that. That's how you say it. Lekaramaki. It's not Lekaramaki or Lekaramaki.
I'm not the pronunciation expert.
Lekaramaki.
It kind of like I hear that on SHL broadcasts.
That's
all
what
the
I
time.
hear too. And Alvin actually
corrected me.
Yeah, Alvin does a good job. Obviously, Swedish, so it helps, but of pronouncing it. So I'm sure the guy that always likes to correct our pronunciations on YouTube will find this and let us know. Despite what Canucks PR and the players telling the media on how to pronounce their name.
The funniest thing to me, this is an old story, and people know it because I made fun of him for I think a month on the podcast because I had so much fun with it. Was when Patrick Allvin first got hired. Okay, Faber asked him a question about Linus Karlsson, and he was like, "I'm gonna nail the pronunciation. I'm gonna impress this first Swedish NHL GM." He's like Linus Karlsson, and like he's like, "Yeah, that's how they sit on an SHL broadcast." And Patrick responds, and he's just like, Yeah, I really liked Linus's season this year, and I had so much fun with that. That Faber was so excited about it, and Patrick was just like, "Yeah, Linus, it's just Linus." And so now it's Linus Karlsson, but I absolutely love that. Okay, moving on from that. Here we go. If you are seriously, this is from Callie Canuck, who told us where he got married earlier, which was great. If you were seriously talking about NHL expansion in Canada, maybe Quebec City gets another shot or a second team in Southern Ontario. Harman, how many more US markets would the NHL have to go to for them to bring a team to Canada? I'm going to say there's going to be at least 5 more expansion teams to 5 new US markets before they bring a team to Canada.
Whew. Gary.
Well, this is a hot take. I mean, I actually don't think it's a hot take among fans. It would be from the NHL's perspective. I don't think they should expand, period. Like 32 teams are perfect with the current divisional format. You've got 8 teams per division. What are you going to do when it's 34?
You water down the product. That's what you do.
Yeah. I mean, it's just you're watering things down. And I mean, I also just strictly think about it from a fan's perspective, right? You have your favorite team that you root for. Most people in this program, it's going to be the Canucks. You have a 1 in 32 shot of winning the Stanley Cup. I mean, all things being equal, of course, team quality changes that. But the more teams you throw into the mix, the more random things can become. The harder it is for your one specific team to win it all.
Yeah, but then the flip side, the NHL looks at that and says, well, more teams equals more revenue, you know, more players paying escrow, yada, yada.
I agree
with you, Harm. And I would love to see teams relocated before expansion. But
here's
the business world, that's probably not feasible.
Yeah.
Here's an idea I just thought of while I was trying to come up with an idea of how I was going to respond to you, Harm. This is what I was thinking. Go to 40 teams, okay? Your top 20 are your tier 1 or your 25 or 30, whatever. And then you've got like a relegation system because you can't, I've always thought about this because like in Europe, this is what they do, right? Like you have different tiers of professional leagues. And I don't know. It's a very half-baked idea. And there's about 100 holes you can poke in it right now because I'm just giving birth to it right now. But I like the idea of a relegation system. And like, I don't want tanking anymore. Like I'm anti-tank. Teams that are at the bottom, like teams like the Coyotes, the Sharks, like those aren't NHL teams. Go get the best team in the AHL, bring them up. I don't know. I'm just spitballing now.
Yeah, I don't think that works, especially because what happens when, like, for example, a guy like Sidney Crosby, when he went to Pittsburgh, imagine he doesn't even enter the highest level. He doesn't even play the NHL because Pittsburgh's relegated. Like the league would hate that. And I think a lot of fans would, or like imagine if Connor Bedard this year was in the AHL or whatever equivalent it would be rather than the NHL.
But, and European soccer fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but when that happens, usually those players get moved because those players say, I want to play in the top tier.
Yeah, they get loaned out.
Right? Like, that's
not happening in the NHL.
How much better are the stories if Sidney Crosby says, you know what? Loan me to where I want to play.
The Vancouver Canucks. I want to play for Rick
Tocchet. I got a very convincing letter from a young reporter out there named David Quadrelli, and I really want to go to Vancouver. Like, how much better are the stories if that happens?
Yeah, I can't argue with those vibes, definitely.
Okay, speaking of vibes, this is from Jesse C. Quads, what role in an NHL organization do you think your vibes approach would make you best at? I thought about this. Probably wouldn't be GM. Owner. I'd be a good owner, I think.
You'd be a fun owner. I'd be
a fun owner, right? I would be a fun owner. We'd have a fun owner. We'd have a lot of vibes, giveaways and stuff.
Spend.
If I was the GM, you'd tell me to trade my draft picks away every year.
Yeah, and we would be competing every single year.
Bill Foley in Vegas.
Basically, I was literally just gonna say I'd basically just be Bill Foley. Like I would literally just be the Vegas Golden Knights owner. Like
then you'd fire Harm's ass with new GM coming in with no draft picks left.
No, I would keep Harm. I would keep Harm. Harm would be my director of grounding. That would literally be your title.
Grounding.
It's just like I'd be like, Harm,
What is
Harm, here's a vibe, and then you have to explain to me why I'm wrong. And then that helps me. It helps me as a podcast co-host. You keep me grounded. That's what I need in my front office. That's the thing. I'd be a good owner because I can recognize my blind spots. There's few of them, but I can recognize where they are.
Yeah, like Noah Juleson.
Yeah,
Okay,
you'd have Noah Juleson making $6 million a year,
My
anchoring the
6'6"
top pair.
blind spot.
Make him captain. Make him captain.
Oh, get it done. Get it done. That would be my big line is get it done. Okay. This one from Logan Van Dyke. I like this. And I don't want to talk about this again, but he said, just move Arizona to Canada and be done with the changes. Again, you can't move a team to Canada right now. You can't.
No.
Like with the way
The dollar's got to get
things-
stronger in the
Yeah,
economy.
the way things are going in Winnipeg is kind of what everybody's looking at right now. And I don't know if you saw this, guys. The playoff tickets for the Canucks, they came out today. They're very expensive. And I was reading up on this a little bit more.
You thought they were expensive, eh? I didn't think they were that. Like, I thought they were reasonably priced. I thought they would be like $300-$400.
Well, aren't they? Like the cheapest one I saw was $270.
Okay, I saw it was a bit less, but I don't know.
Okay.
People have been tweeting them all out. I thought, first glance, I thought, you know what? I thought they might be hiked a little higher, but it's obviously dependent on, what people are willing to spend in this economy.
I've seen in different, like concerts and stuff. Companies don't want to lose out when their stuff's just going to get sold on resale markets. So what we're seeing is ticket prices getting set a lot higher. And I'm trying to like dig into this a bit more because I don't know a ton about the subject. I just had one very interesting conversation today as I was kind of digging in more on this, like concerts, all these different events. A lot of places that know they're going to sell out, like the Canucks do. The Canucks know they're going to sell out. They're now just setting the original ticket prices a bit higher rather than putting it out for, let's say, 120, but then it's going to resell for 250. Like the Canucks don't see that money, right? So, and again, I'm using the Canucks as an example because it's a Canucks conversation. It's just an interesting thing I noticed, and that I'm kind of learning more about. It's a trend in the entertainment industry right now, is that we're seeing that a little bit more, that people are setting their prices originally higher rather than letting people buy them and then flip them for profit, right? So we will see. And Matt Jones in the Facebook chat said, hey, do we know if it's the skate tonight? I am going to the game. Matt, you're going to have a great time because they are wearing the skate. I hope you have your skate jersey ready to go. Matt Jones, of course, regular listener and contributor of the show over from the Facebook live chat. But yes, black skate tonight. And Harm, another thing I want to talk to you about, they have to wear the black skate in the playoffs.
I was just going to ask you guys. Yeah.
Said it before. They have to pick a jersey. You can't wear alternates in the playoffs. For those that don't know, you have to pick a home, you have to pick an away jersey. There's no alternates. But you could theoretically pick the black skate for your home jersey and then wear your white Orcas on the road. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with PJ about it in the press box a couple of weeks ago, and we don't know definitively, but we were guessing that they won't go black skate just because you think about from a corporate perspective, like what are your main colors? What's your brand really known for?
Yeah.
Primarily in the modern era, it's the blue and green, it's the Orca. So while I would love that for the vibes, I'm with you. I would love to see the black skate in the playoffs. I'd be mildly surprised if that's what they actually go with.
And PJ, he was on Carson Price last week talking about this. He talked with Rutherford and he said the same thing. Like, yeah, it would be nice for them to do it, but he was downplaying it and just kind of hinting at what Rutherford told him. It seems unlikely at this point, but it would be fun.
I began answering the question about Lekaramaki, and then I never finished answering it. Top G just pointed out in the chat. I started talking about how his name's pronounced, and then I just never answered the
What was the question again?
I can't remember. I gotta scroll up.
We got so sidetracked.
Lekaramaki. Yeah, it was like, yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, you didn't even read out the whole question.
Oh, I told the story about Faber and Alvin instead of answering it. Okay, here we go. I'll find
a good producer would get you back on track, but I got caught up in it too.
It's okay. I gotta find it. It was oh no, he was asking about Lekaramaki and Pettersson with the big club. which reminds me about something about the 2010 Vancouver Canadians. And I'll get back to I'm just kidding. The Lekkerimäki question. Let's answer that one. I don't think they'll be with the big club in all seriousness. I talked about it earlier in this week. Lekkerimäki is going to be here longer than originally expected. He's going to be here for 2-3 weeks, not heading back to Sweden until I would guess like April 10th, maybe a little bit sooner than that. But Abbotsford's got 6 games that he could potentially get into. Don't know if he's going to get in against Colorado tomorrow or on Saturday, but they do have 4 home games after that. So again, he was in Abbotsford practicing with the team. He had a practice. He was on PP2. He was playing with Bains and Stevens, although obviously Bains is now with the big club. Don't think Lekkerimäki is going to get into the NHL lineup. And folks, like, just looking at the Abbotsford blue line, if you heard me talking about Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, and kind of where he's going to slot in Abbotsford, he might struggle to find playing time in the playoffs. Like, you've got guys like Christian Wolanin, Guillaume Brisebois down there. You have to think of where the Canucks are at the NHL level, right? Like where they are in their cycle right now. If this were any year over the past 10 years, yeah, maybe the Canucks are getting a good look at Elias Pettersson at the NHL level. But if you're trying to win hockey games and you're trying to fine tune for the playoffs, you're not throwing a young prospect like that onto your blue line when, again, like, he's not even going to be a prominent feature on Abbotsford's blue line. I would expect, like, he's getting him some experience right now. He's getting comfortable. And then I also think next year he's going to spend the entirety of next year in Abbotsford. Maybe he gets a call up, maybe he gets a look at some point. But I would be very, very, I would say it's almost impossible that we see Elias Pettersson come up and play NHL games for the Canucks down the stretch here, or of course into the playoffs. I would be stunned. Right now, it's all about Lekkerimäki and Pettersson getting their feet wet, getting comfortable in North America.
Yeah, it's not happening. It's simple as that.
I could have answered that a lot sooner, but I had to get sidetracked. Okay, is there any other hockey questions? Because here's the thing. I did get some baseball questions, but I'm going to leave them till the end. So I want to talk hockey as much as we can, and we got a little time left over, so I'm going to get some baseball questions. But, okay, this is a good one, Harm. This one's for you. From Jesse C. Harm, if most models try to show players true values, how do you think GM scouts account for positional scarcity and add that to the trade or contract value of a player?
That's a good question. I think... well, anytime you're making a decision or an evaluation of a player or what they should be worth, you're never relying on one input is the main thing that it comes down to. Like, even when I'm writing an article and I'm trying to, like, much less forget how NHL teams have their process. If I'm even just writing an article, trying to evaluate the merits and potential value of, let's say, a defenseman, there's statistical models you can lean on as a starting point, and there are an endless number of underlying numbers that you can try and weigh. Then there's the actual scouting element of actually watching that player, whether it's live viewings or just going back and watching video, which I more commonly do. And then you kind of have to merge what you see in the data, what you see with the eye test, and understand market dynamics as well, in terms of, okay, if this player is a right shot defenseman, how many other right shot defensemen are available in the market right now? What are your other alternative options? Because decisions to go out and trade for a defenseman, for example, don't exist in a vacuum. Every potential move you could pursue, there's always an opportunity cost, and you're always weighing, okay, what's plan A versus plan B look like? What's the better route? What's the best bang for our buck? And you kind of have to go and evaluate every single factor. And that's why, even though, like, these all-in-one models are useful for getting a quick snapshot of a player, or even like those JFresh cards or whatever, they're never going to be it's nothing more than just a quick snapshot, because your actual deep dive is going to include so many more components than that. You're muted.
There you go. I was going to say, that's a really good way to put that, because when it comes to making decisions, like you said it earlier this week when we were talking about Filip Hronek, right? Was, the Canucks have to figure out, okay, what is plan B? And look, like, even when it came to Elias Pettersson, like, they knew what plan B was going to be. Like, they had it. They didn't want to think about it, but they had thought about it. They had figured out that, okay, if this person isn't going to sign with us, we're going to have to do something. And they figured out what their plan B was going to be. And again, your plan A is plan A for a reason, right? It's because it's the most favorable plan. That's the one you want the most, right? But you have plan B. So again, I think that's a really good way of putting that. And again, it matters what teams already have as well. Okay, anyone else from Karen Versation? Can Harm explain Dom's quality of competition and quality of teammate updates to his player models and what that means for what Hronik's extension should look like?
Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to read the deep dive yet because I think it just went up today. But I think the point of it was to try and account for players that have had really extreme usage. So, for example, Mo Seider on Detroit, he's, of course, their number one defenseman, and his raw underlying numbers are not very good in terms of controlling shots, controlling chances. And the problem with just viewing those raw numbers are that Seider has, of all NHL defensemen, I think it is the most extreme usage in terms of how often he goes up against elite forwards. And so it's an extreme like that where he is basically thrown to the wolves, thrown into the fire. And I think he's trying to do a better job of, he already had a quality of competition, quality of teammate adjustment factor to his model, but he's trying to account more for those really extreme use cases. Another example would be Connor Bedard. In the sense that, okay, not that he's playing the hardest matchups among NHL forwards, but if you look at how hard his matchups are relative to the fact that Philip Kurashev and Nick Foligno are two of his most common line mates this year, there needs to be a more of an adjustment there to account for, okay, his surface level underlying play driving numbers aren't very good. And as absolutely. Far as, and for Hronik, I don't think it's not going to impact his value because Hronik, if anything, is in a favorable situation because the top pair isn't like, they're not sheltered, but they don't play every night against the opposition's best players. Like we've seen it throughout the year that we'll see sometimes the Carson Soucy pair, sometimes Tyler Myers, sometimes even Ian Cole match up against the other team's best players when the Canucks are playing at home ice. Like think about when New Jersey was in town in January, for example. It was the Myers pair that got that matchup instead of Houston Hronik. So Hronik's minutes and matchups aren't that difficult. And from a quality of teammate perspective, he's playing with Quinn Hughes. So he's actually in a favorable situation, and that's not really gonna let's say inflate his value for his next contract.
I like this idea. Jeremy Lee, Harm, Quads, and Grady should do a playoff fantasy. I like if we would do we should do a bracket. We'll do brackets. I think that's more fun.
Like team wise?
Yeah, like brackets for each round.
Yeah, sure, let's do it.
Is March Madness going on right now? March Madness is happening, right? Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's March, buddy.
What? No, I know. I don't know.
This guy's got baseball and hockey on his mind 24/7.
I just randomly get like a notification from one of my sports apps that's like, bang, and then it's a name I've never heard of, and it's like wins it for Oklahoma. I'm like, oh, okay.
It wasn't for the Vladdy Guerrero, a 450-foot dinger.
He hit a bomb. That's good.
Yeah,
Good
Jays have broken it open.
What's the score?
6-2. Top of the 7th.
Good for them. Good for them. Okay.
I love by the way, I just got to say, I love the overreactions from like the first 2 innings when they went up 9 up, 9 down, and everyone's like, oh, the offense, this is the same as the playoffs last year. They can't hit. Boom. They break it open. Couple dingers. They actually got some runners scored. Guys came up with runners in scoring position and brought them in. So
yeah, can't wait for them to have another strong regular season just to lose in the wild card again. Just probably. Like another Toronto-based
here we go. Team. I love that though.
You know what? We ended up going quite a while with the hockey questions. I think this made people want to ask more hockey questions, was me threatening that I was going to talk baseball as soon as the hockey questions were done, because we got a lot of hockey questions and we're basically ready to close out the show. I don't even have time to talk about baseball, so we can close it out there. And here's another one. Two more. We'll end it on 2 hockey questions. I won't even talk baseball. RP88 asked, is there a scenario where we could keep Hronik and still get Tanev in the offseason? I'll answer this one. Yeah, absolutely there is. There's a scenario where Chris Tanev says, I really like playing in Vancouver. I never wanted to leave. I will sign for less money to finish out my career in Vancouver. That's where I want to be. I want to try to win a cup, assuming Dallas doesn't win one with them. I'm going to sign in Vancouver. I liked living there. I'm going to sign and be with this core for the twilight years of my career. That's one scenario. The other scenario is Hronek says, yeah, I'll sign for less money. But I think out of those two, the Tanev scenario is a little more likely.
Yeah, I don't think Tanev's going to sign for less either. His market is going to be so robust. There are going to be so many attractive situations out there in terms of city, quality of team, who he could potentially play with, that I don't think he needs to take less to come to Vancouver. But even then, if the Canucks want to pay market value, they could hypothetically do that because they've got a number of expiring defenseman contracts. Would it be the wisest way to allocate their cap dollars? Probably not, in terms of doling out those costly extensions for Hronek and even for Tanev. Like, at this point, considering how strong he's played, he's probably going to get term on his next deal. And considering his age, there's going to be risk on that. So it may not be the path that I'd consider going down, but theoretically, if the Canucks wanted to do it, they could. It would just force them to, for example, then fill out the forward group more inexpensively.
And you have to remember that just a year younger is Luke Schenn, right? Luke Schenn got 3 years, 2.75 per year. Like, that's the floor for the next Tanev contract. Tanev could theoretically, like, if they're using that as a comparable, like, he's going to be able to get, I don't know, like maybe another 4x4 potentially. And I think, the Canucks could sign that, but that would be signing Tanev till his age 39 season. I would say, like, the more realistic, like, if you're asking me to guess what Tanev's going to sign on July 1st, I'm going to say he gets 3 years at $4.5 million. I'm thinking that's what he ends up signing for.
Were you looking at AFP Analytics? Because I got that spreadsheet pulled up here. They have him at 3 years, 4.6.
I don't even know what AFP Analytics is.
We brought that up. We referenced it a couple of weeks back on the show for projected contracts.
But no, honestly, I came up with that off the top of my head. But Harm, so if it is 3 years, 4.5, is that irresponsible for the Canucks to sign that? Because you're saying it's not the best allocation of cap dollars. I'm telling you that that's the best allocation when it comes to the vibes.
I wouldn't mind it if the idea is, okay, we're going to, like, I think the more interesting question is, would you rather do that than sign Hronek at an $8 million cap hit? And I think at that point, in terms of being Hughes' partner, and I think at that point, Tanev would look awfully enticing, because then you'd have leftover cash to add a different type of defenseman. And again, just the longer that we see Hronek, especially in the second half, sort of struggle defensively a bit, like, you can't afford to sign an anchor contract, because that's how a team's competitive window closes prematurely.
I wonder. I always wonder about the offseason, and it's hard because at this time of year, we'd be projecting everything. Like, we'd be projecting, here's the top free agents on July 1st. It feels like until the Canucks are eliminated, we're not even going to talk about that. Like, we're not even going to talk about that until the Canucks are eliminated from the playoffs. We're not having those conversations. It's funny because we were having those conversations in, like, February last year.
Yeah. You mean until they win the Stanley Cup?
Of course. Thank you, Harm. Thank you. There you go. That's the perfect vibe.
Eliminated from the playoffs.
No more draft lottery talk. No more who's the projected first round. Who could the Canucks pick? I do not miss those days.
No more. Maybe Akito Hirose can hold down a top 4 role next year. Again, not to pick on players. I hate throwing out players' names, but those were the takes that we were hearing last year. But
I thought maybe bottom pair. Yeah,
we got through, maybe in Abbotsford, maybe but let's wrap it up there. No baseball talk. We avoided it on MLB opening day, but that's partly because I want to go watch some baseball. So we'll close it out there. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Grady Sass, my name is Dave Woodrelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation with Harman and Quads, brought to you by the Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X's fresh look is just an added bonus to its range, since you can drive up to 406 kilometers on a single charge. That's enough to get you from Kitsilano to Whistler or Kamloops to Kelowna and back, and still be home in time for the game.
Now that's what we'd call electric. The best part, by choosing electric, you can get up to $11,000 in rebates and incentives. The BZ4X are in stock and selling quickly, so make sure to visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer to get your hands on one. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.